Man, God is always so good. Yo, it's crazy what I'm about to tell you guys, but today, while I was at work, it's so crazy. So I was just doing my usual thing at work today, right? And I had this vision, this clear vision of like a childhood memory just pop up into my head instantly. Like this was a memory from like probably like 14, 15 years ago or something like that, or like super long ago, right? And I just had this clear vision, and it was me in like this zoo that I went to with my grandma. And it was like a kind of like an indoor building zoo, right? And one of the rooms that I went into was a room that was filled with all these like big like leaves and stuff, and the whole room was filled with butterflies. And I was like, huh, why am I getting this vision now? Like it's so weird. Like this is just randomly popping up in my head. Like I don't usually get like visions like this in my head of my childhood like that, right? And to see it so clear. Like I remember the butterflies, like the color of the butterflies. Like one of them was like yellow and black, and the other one was like a monarch butterfly. And I remember it also being very humid in this room. Now, the temperature doesn't really have to do with anything, but I just remembered it all. And it all came to my senses at work. And I was like, yo, what is this? Like, this is so weird, right? And so, enough with the yapping. Let me get on to the main point. So, hours pass by in work, right? And I'm listening to one of George Janko's podcasts. Now, he's also a brother in Christ. He's a Christian as well. I highly suggest you watch his content. I'm saying this like I'm a bigger YouTuber than him. Hey, I love my man Janko, George. Hey, maybe I could be on his podcast one day. But anyways, I was listening to this podcast, and this was just like a random podcast that just came up on my recommended, right? And I was an hour into this podcast, and then suddenly his girlfriend, was talking about her breakthrough with Jesus. And so as they were talking about their breakthrough and how she finally came to true faith, she was saddened because she was like, oh, like I had to let go of my past ways and stuff like that, my old me. And then George was like, you didn't let go of your old self. Your old self is still there. It just evolved. And in that instance, like even before that, when they were in the conversation, I was like, huh, what is a creature or an organism that becomes reborn, that like becomes something different, completely different, but is still the same, theoretically the same like organism, right? And I was like, huh, a caterpillar, right? Like think about it, like caterpillars, they're these like, crawly, like sometimes prickly, they have like 100 legs. They look all gross and squishy and all that, right? And then they go into this stage, they turn into this cocoon in order to be reborn, and then they're reborn into something that is so beautiful. And then now they have the ability to take flight. Like imagine that this is an insect that crawls around on the ground, suddenly being able to have the ability to fly. That's like if I were to have the ability to fly, like if I were to go to sleep, and then the next day I would have the ability to fly. Like that sounds crazy. And so I guess what I'm getting at is that literally like as he said that, right after he said that, he was like, oh, well, a caterpillar becomes reborn and turns into a butterfly. So theoretically, it's still the same organism, it's just reborn and it evolves. And so at that very moment, I was like, yo, like it just clicked. Like not even like, it wasn't even crazy that I predicted that he was gonna say a caterpillar, like being able, like using a caterpillar as an example being reborn. But the fact that I got this vision hours, I'm talking like 4 hours before I even watched this podcast, the fact that I was getting a vision randomly, like think about it, like I could have thought of anything in the world, right? I could have thought of my YouTube. I could have thought of literally any other random memory I had in my brain from like the past 22 years of me living. But the fact that I remembered that specific day, in that specific moment, hours before I watched that podcast, like, you can't make this up, bro. I wish I was making this up, bro. Like, I swear, like, I wish I could go into like my eyes and like my brain files and literally like show you my thoughts and like have an example, like make you guys feel what I was feeling. Because in that very moment, I was like, wow, God is truly great. God is truly great. And I just want to let you guys know that when you are reborn, you're going to become unrecognizable. Like, you quite literally will be unrecognizable. Like, you're going to still be the same exact person, right? You're still in the same body, but you evolve. You become reborn. You know, when we follow God, we are reborn spiritually, not physically like a caterpillar to a butterfly, but our souls are evolved and reborn. And so it says in the Bible that unless one is born again, he cannot see the kingdom. So when you become reborn, what does it mean to be reborn? Well, when you truly are reborn, you realize that those stinky habits you used to do back then were wrong. Now, I'm not talking about like maybe like playing video games or eating Hershey Kisses and donuts. You know, those are habits that you could fix. But like, what I'm trying to say is like the sins. Well, low-key, if you indulged in too many like Hershey Kisses, that's also a sin as well. Like, low-key, I'm gonna keep it a bug. Like, gluttony is a sin, right? And so when you are truly reborn again, you're gonna notice that these habits that you used to do were wrong. And suddenly, like, you just can't do them again. Like, it feels wrong to do the things you used to do. And that's what it truly means to be reborn. Now, obviously, just like the caterpillar going into a butterfly, you know, the butterfly has the ability to fly. Also, George Janko said this in his podcast. The butterfly also has the ability to fly and also go back down. The butterfly can easily just go back to the ground and literally just stand on the ground. But because you are reborn, you now have the ability to fly higher, higher and higher. You have the ability to take off. Like, essentially, you have no limits. Like, the sky isn't even the limit at this point. It's literally the stars and beyond. George Jaco also said this in his podcast. He said that the butterfly can also still reach the ground. It could still touch the ground, right? And so when we're on this walk with God, you know, we're going to have moments where we fall back down, right? But a righteous man falls 7 times and he still gets back up. So just because you're on this walk with God doesn't mean it's going to be all rainbows and butterflies, like, essentially, right? Like, sure, you're going to have those blessings, those good moments, but it doesn't guarantee that you won't have bad moments, right? I mean, Jesus suffered the most, right? And he was a sinless man. So what makes you think that your walk with God is going to be perfect, right? It's not. But because you are reborn, because you've gained the ability to soar higher, just like that butterfly, it now gives you a chance, right? Like, you have a chance. Now that you've been reborn, you have the chance to take back off, to fly back up, to keep moving forward and surpassing your limits, like Asta Uzumaki. And that's what it means to be reborn. When you are reborn, you're going to put your past self to death. You're going to put your old ways to death because you don't associate with that version of yourself anymore. And that's exactly what I did. You know, you can't serve 2 masters at once, right? You either love your master or you hate him. You either love God or you hate him. You know, we like to play this little in and out game, this lukewarm Christianity lifestyle game. But God doesn't condone lukewarmness. You know, it says in the Bible that if you are neither hot or cold, he's going to spit you right out his mouth. So when we're living this lifestyle, we shouldn't be like, oh yeah, there are some exceptions. there are some little tweaks here and there. You know, I could hide my sins from God. No, you can't. You know, you could look perfect on your outward appearance, but God doesn't judge your appearance. He judges your heart. And if your heart is hardened by this world, if you choose to harden your heart from God, then you're not going to be able to experience his love, right? Because you're essentially too scared to open up to him. You know, to feel God's love, we have to learn to accept his love. You cannot force love upon anyone else, right? Upon anyone. So we gotta learn to accept his love. And that's what it means to be reborn. To put your past ways to death. To actually learn to accept God's love. You know, it's not gonna be 1, 2, 3 done. It's not gonna be a day process. Sometimes it takes years, right? But it's worth it, bro. You know, the best things take time to build. So just like your relationship with God, you can't expect him or expect you to be perfect for him in a day, right? I mean, God doesn't call us when we're perfect, but rather when we're imperfect, because we wouldn't need a doctor if we were healthy. And that's exactly what Jesus did. He went and he sat with the tax collectors because he showed that we needed him as much as he needed us. And another thing I just realized is that when that caterpillar turns into a butterfly, it gains a completely new perspective on life, right? Because the caterpillar was once this crawly creature on the ground, and now it has the ability to fly. Like, imagine seeing the caterpillar's eyes, like being able to see through the caterpillar's eyes. Like, that's like us being able to fly, right? Imagine that, right? And so when we are reborn in the kingdom, when we are reborn on our walk with God, we gain a new perspective. We see the world not the way we used to see it back then when we lived a life of sin, but now we realize that God has eternal love for us and that he made this world so that we can experience it, right? So that we can actually experience the full love of his love. And just like a loving father with his children, he wants to give you good things. But if you choose to reject him, reject his gifts, then you're not going to receive them. And that is a choice that you make. God gave us free will. And so it's up to you to decide to live this stinky, sinful, lustful lifestyle, or to live the way, the truth, and the life. So anyways, I hope you guys did enjoy today's video. Stay blessed, stay wealthy, and remember to keep surpassing your limits by rebuking the kingdom of darkness and embracing oh, my light just went out, but embracing the kingdom of righteousness. And I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.